Dr.
Oh,
Joe,
thank you.
once again.
Thank you so much, Lukey. I thought perhaps today might be just an interesting program because we could swap things around a little bit. Of course, people really have been really concerned and talking a lot about neoplastic condition and cancer, and we've written quite a few books which eventually would be published about this, and I began a very successful treatment process which I used to do at the clinic before they closed us down, but I used a therapy which was really involving light more, totally from my deep insight into what neoplasm is really, which really is just simply cells less than having kept their proper electrical valence, and the cell is made up out of double-spore building blocks, and those double-spore building blocks form into a bacteria within the cell, and then that bacteria forms a really harder outer shell around itself. It becomes a mold. And so cancer really is a mold, and then that grows in colonies, and little mycelial threads grow through the cell into an adjacent cell. And the moment that happens, a red blood corpuscle sticks to the endothelial cells in the area, and it's a double spore, which it's made up out of, aggregate and fuse and differentiate out of that red blood corpuscle, and it organizes itself into a cell which is within a field, a blueprint field that can exist there, but it typically does what it can to wall the area off and infest the area until such a time it is that it's possible that the body could have its substance necessary to eco-sterilize against biofilm that all these organisms exist within. You never can find a virus by itself, and then no investigation ever really has found just simply a virus of itself to create something of itself. And then people really have a long-standing bet to see if something could be jump-started in a healthy person, and no one's ever provided any evidence that they could jump-start something in a healthy person. We could really say that the vast majority of oncologists and people have never investigated life below the level of a cell, and it's a fact that mitotic cell division doesn't account for all the red blood corpuscles that arrive every day brand new, and the vast majority of people have no idea even that an epidemic such as bile occlusion really could have any effect at all on any condition. But it is a fact in epidemiological research that celiac and liver and bile occludedness and fat global challenge and this sort of thing is a major condition under every condition. It's a common denominator. Yeah, but I think that I just would care very much to provide some hope and care for people that they can have a future and inspire those people out there with some informative work, that really does relate to how a person can have a remarkable result, and really there's innovative treatment that can assist to help a person clear away neoplastic condition if they can really be a bit more aware of what that is really, which it really is a systemic condition, not a local condition at all, and that as it's possible to heal things up more, as it's a systemic condition, not a local condition, people can really have a fairly good success, But the body naturally provides substances, pancreatin, that as you're on live food, pancreatin is stimulated at night, and it's just very minute amounts of 200 nanoparticles per litre of your body's fluid. It's a very small amount, but that's enough that's necessary just to be able to clear away a simple fetal endoblastic cells and things that form. But the body has to have its proper immune response, and it only can have this as a result of having good intestinal flora. And to this end, of course, we're living in nature as a result of bringing in life colloid probiotic, and that is the very substance that really is missing, quite sort of radically, in the body. But anyway, we've been talking a little bit about just even how the mind affects things and that. But on a quantum mechanics, of course, it's very elusive and bizarre because you've got things occurring seemingly across distance without seemingly any contact or even direct behaviour of one part. So that this one part is really influencing other parts that separated even by very large distances. And this particle really in this program is existing more as a superposition and occupying a superposition in the matrix. And as a result of this sort of superposition being occupied, really you have a very powerful energetic state coming to you, which is involving several simultaneous energetic states of being, and this is occurring in more than one place at the same time. But the brain processes information really by grey matter, and that's sort of really on-off, and you can process really vast amounts of information quickly with on-off. And then you've got a white matter, like a fat matter of your brain. So you've got the grey and white matter. And that white matter is sort of really the right hemisphere, and it's sort of much, much more fatty. And it's able to process information more from the flux of the whole. And these two brain states, on-off and processing things from the whole, really is what whole brain functioning is about. And this brain matrix hardware is really like a holographic reality, a gestalt like a holographic reality. We have within this consciousness and our programming and our connection with each other, and how words are programming our DNA and RNA. But you've got really a ready-made pantry of quantum weirdness, really, beyond what could necessarily be explained by people's experience or senses, because this is an awareness beyond wakefulness and beyond dreaming, and certainly beyond deep sleep, these states. Yet, how is it possible for us to really explain how consciousness of itself influences the course of conditions and disease, but that as the person is really able to increase their slow wave deep sleep sort of slow wave patterning. That slow wave patterning allows amino acids and things to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier to assist to really create the proper programming and energetics of the brain. Of course, Dr. Hemmer in the late 70s, early 80s and things was someone that I was really caring very much to study underneath, because I could see that how powerful it was, his reading simply of brain CAT scans to be observed to see conditions and things that people suffered from in their body, and how emotion and things such can have created and influenced the electrical flow of things within the body, so that tissue injury could have lessened, had the ease of ability to repair itself, and that tissue can have become fermentive to get its energy, and as I said, grown into mold which really is very resistant to chemotherapy and all that sort of thing. But consciousness really bends gravity, certainly, and causes things which is so far beyond our consciousness to slow down, and really starts to allow, celestial orbs start to orbit more this beautiful information, that we have. But of course, we really do very much with very strong, weak organic acid and strong alkaline elements, and combine these to create a field of an anion and a cation, and the energy between these two poles causes within the field of this a mold which is made up out of double spores to differentiate and down-regulate itself back into its building block pieces, which then could become incorporated back into healthy blood. Mitotic cell division doesn't explain how all of our cells rose at all, but colloidal biology and Secrets of an Alkaline Body very much do, and I'd encourage people to read this work, which I think it's probably the most profound work of its kind, explaining more life below the level of a cell and a brand new insight into biology, which is colloidal biology, where blood is not made in the long bones as modern medicine has insisted, and our cells did not arise as a result of mitotic cell division, as Darwinian and Hegelian theorists have created a paradigm of, which is a paralysis and absolutely not the truth at all, but an absolute false lie. Our cells arise as a result of a process called aggregation, fusion, and differentiation, and this is not by mitotic cell division at all. And Darwin and Hegel and all these theorists couldn't tell you how a bacteria arises, but a bacteria certainly does arise as a result of this process of aggregation, fusion, and differentiation. And it doesn't mean that chromosomes and DNA are not involved with everything, but that in the growth of these cells, it is not by mitotic cell division that they incur their growth at all, but they incur their growth more as a result of this process of aggregating and fusing and differentiating of the building blocks of colloids aggregating into spores, and then which are called viruses, and then those spores fusing with other double spores, also called viruses, and then those double spores fusing into a mass to become a corpuscle, as a red blood corpuscle, or a bacteria, and then in the right conditions, if blood-borne inhibitors are not present, the double spore, rather than being in a corpuscle, it could become stagnant and in some place, and because of the morphogenetic field there, it could become tissue for the repair at the repair site, or that red blood corpuscle could be the colloid double building block stages of this could become a encystment to and wall off the molded area of the body, and then a fibrinolytic sort of a tissue developed around that, and these organisms tend to love to have ease of ability to cloak themselves with protein a little, like our humanness of ourself, and so it's not so easy able to be recognized. And so there's a whole range of ways the body does to help clear away and create apoptosis. And one of the things that I found was that often people came to me and I might have to give them a treatment that would last 3 months. And so one of the things that I did, but I had to let people know that this would create some light sensitivity for them for at least 3 days in very bright light. But I made a solution that really had a phytonutrient in it from pacus, the Indian pacus, and there was red pacu and yellow pacus of the herbs. And then I combined this with coriander and the chlorophyll from coriander, and I put that into a saline solution, quite fairly strong, and so then that had to be dripped over the course of about a few hours under the tongue, slowly taken in the dark, and then after that was consumed, then I had a very, very beautiful felt red monochromatic coloured blanket that I wrapped the person in, and they lay there for about 2-3 hours, and then that was the treatment. Over the course of about 3 months, what occurred within that moment was tissues such as this got absorbed by a element which allowed the body to start to tag it and recognize that that was not part of the body. So the methods and things which I've used really to clear away tumour really and neoplastic condition comes about as a result of a very astute insight into what neoplastic condition is. And I wish that it would be possible for people in oncology to have a deeper understanding and begin to write more from actually what neoplastic condition is. But certainly you could say that it's the body's healthy response given the circumstance that mold can have taken over of a cell. And then how does your body's immune system respond, and can it, to clear this away? I used a life colloid, which I collected very specifically to have lumbrokinase in it, because lumbrokinase is the enzyme of the most powerful enzyme on the earth. Isn't that interesting? Yep, far more powerful than all these organisms and enzymes that actually digest protein and things. The most powerful one, fibrolytic enzyme to digest fibrin, happens to be lumbrokinase. And lumbrokinase is put into the life colloid by the process of earthworm passing through this. And that happens to be so powerful, matter of fact, that just very, very little nanoparticles of this in a litre of fluid, of the blood fluid, was enough to really assist to help break down fibrin deposits, and over time, through apoptosis, be able to cause amygdalin-like elements, B15 and other things, in fresh fruits and vegetables as live food to be entered of those cells, which the neoplastic cells always have very, very little to no rhodium or ruthenium or osminium around them, and those cells are so easily able to be absorbed of amygdalin and B15 and substances such, and pangamic acid, and then pantothenic acid and pyridoxine, and all of these substances which assist to help create a cascade of apoptosis, in a natural wrecking of a cell which is not meant to be there. But the body has to have its eco-sterilants. And these eco-sterilants eco-sterilize the biofilm that you find everything in. Even our cells have a glycoprotein casing around them that's slightly dry, that causes element to be drawn out of the cell, waste and things, which if you've got non-life food being consumed, then you've got strange undigestible protein, you've got the runaway sugars, and you've got very little natural paciferin, which is really the substance that eco-sterilizes against mold, fungus, and yeast. And you know, you've got between an anode and a cathode, where you've got these lemon bicarb shots, which we recommend. You've got such a power coming back into the blood, but human beings, we're supposed to have weak organic acids, and our blood is supposed to be a 7.3 pH, but most people's blood is 7.42 on average, and that is extremely alkaline, more than it should be. And then you could tell me, what weak organic acid really is anybody consuming? See, I mean, if you could just imagine that person is sort of bringing in 8 lemons, 8 oranges, perhaps 3 times 3 a day, you're getting an equivalent amount of acid that's necessary, an alkaline element that's necessary to really do a good job to get rid of stains and things you see in the body. But you've got to clear away lymphocyte, aging, pigment, and you've got to get the liver to have its proper biological and biophotonic and electrical force back. I mean, you cannot do that if the blood does not have its weak organic acids and its alkaline element. And these things are extremely important. If anybody's listening, they're interested to have the proper blood-borne inhibitors. You really have got to absorb yourself more in this work, which when I look at other people's work, I can see that people have got a little bit of the picture, or that the author really doesn't have a physiological background, but perhaps in journalism or something, and they're talking to people a little bit, and then the left hand often has no knowledge of what the right hand is knowing and this sort of thing. And there's a lot of compartmentalisation. But there's so many ways to be able to harvest the fruit, the flesh of the fruit of mango. And there's more than just one way, of course, but you could just see the fruit being consumed and assimilated. But as we've been talking in some of our programs and things, we've been alerting people to the dangers of tannins for human beings who have switched over more to be vegetarian, or if you do live food, then you won't have to necessarily be really concerned much about tannins, because live food really is just you being more as a frugivore. And to have heard me say frugivore, which is a fruit-eating animal, could be so frightening to carnivores or raw foodists or even living foodists, because they have no understanding of sugar whatsoever, and they do not have any insight into how sugar is metabolized in the body. And the vast majority of people are just so missing the bus, it's unbelievable, but they have no idea of what the difference is between a complex carbohydrate breaking down into a monosaccharide versus any material substance ending up as a disaccharide, and what is the difference in our body in the way that a sugar is processed, and is a disaccharide sugar a natural sugar, that our liver doesn't have any ability to manage that. But I hear an extremely enormous amount of confusion around sugar and fruit, and these are people who've never studied a day of botany in their life. So they're so confused. So you've got people running around the earth teaching people to eat bananas, for instance. And I have never in my life ever heard of anyone who is treating a diabetic by giving them bananas, like these morons who ride bicycles flat strap are speaking about. And I've got to tell you, they are dumb as beetles, and they have to stop that. Do you know what I mean? I have never in my life heard of someone who's in a critical situation being given those people's program to eat bananas, and that will be good for you. And certainly most people in at least nutrition know that you should not be giving people high glycemic rate food if somebody's diabetic. But why would you want to give it to them anyway? Because studies do show that the body's not able to deal with those disaccharide sugars from that sick fruit, which people love, called the banana. But that is the sickest fruit on the earth, and I'd like to find out if anybody could tell me there is another fruit that's being eaten right now that's even more sick than the banana plant. Sorry about that. But it is full of mold and fungus, and it just wreaks havoc on anybody's body who's in a critical condition. So I know you've got people that are really athletic, and they're eating 12,000 calories of bananas or whatever a day or something, flat strap and burning themselves out and that sort of thing. But if you look at them, they personally, when they get into their 40s and things, they look gaunt and exhausted, and they're addicted to exercise, and they should stop and start having a practice where they have no practice whatsoever and begin and have this meditation. But if they could just have accepted that they are their body as I am, and then they will have renounced everything correctly. They can be living more in I awareness. But these are runaway sugars, which is non-life food, and I call a food which we've evolved to have that does not have any of these strange undigestible proteins or runaway sugars, which are major disease-causing elements. I call all of that dead food. Now, in China, of course, I don't know that they've ever found a single person ever born. That's amazing, isn't it? That is not born with extremely jaundiced condition. And then people do know them as a yellowness of the yellow skin and the yellow race. And it is a bean and a grain eating people, a culture sort of thing. And bean and grain eaters definitely don't grow tall at all, but they certainly grow wide. And then the estrogens, by the age of 30, they all could be called Pat, because you really don't know if they're coming or going. And they've lost their dimorphism. And, of course, the men are no longer able to have beards, and the estrogens cause both men and women to sort of look exactly like each other about the age of 30 in these cultures. But when a brain has been lobotomized of information, like or when everybody over there just exists on cooked dead food, and they evolved a system to assist people manage the symptoms of the cooked dead food, they're frightened beyond belief as to how it's possible for anybody to actually eat something in its uncooked state, because they do know that T4, which has to be cleaved by enzymes at the liver area to make T3, for nutrients to be absorbed by the cell. If a person's a dead food eater and does have a bile occlusion, which the vast majority of these people do, eating live food, which you're meant to do, but you've got such an occlusion, how could you be accepted of something good? Why would you want to put such a beautiful surface over a rusty, rotted condition? It just can't work. That's true. And so they should be frightened, because unless you've got the real answer to the deep-rootedness of the condition, just having a partial answer, is just frightening to them. And then they have no knowledge at all of getting rid of bile occlusion, nor do they teach any of it at all. They just have no idea, and not a single soul I've ever heard on the earth, and please someone show me anyone in Chinese medicine at all. They are grain and bean eaters. It is true. Lots of them are bald. That's true. Most of them really are bald. Now, you cannot be espousing sticking needles in to people and be bald as a badger and be fat-wasted. You know what I mean? No. This is just taking money from the unsuspected people and really not getting at the truth. But you cannot have just a partial truth, run around with that. It's worse than a lie because the whole truth cannot be put. If you go over to a faucet and the hot water won't come on, you could be fine with that. You know what I mean? Okay. But if the hot water faucet's supposed to work, but it's not, why not just get that working again, like it's supposed to? And if the liver is occluded, which the vast majority of people's livers are occluded with wax-like deposit, and the vast majority of people that I see in front of me, they are really, really yellow, bloody skinned, seriously freaking yellow, green round the gills, you know what I mean? Seedy, fucking flaky skin and fucking dandruff all over their shoulders, you know what I mean, on their clothes. And unless they put a bit of lotion on the skin, they look like a lizard, you know what I mean? But we've really got to have the beauty products to make sure that everything looks good. But beauty is really inside, I really would advise people to read that article, Monster Found at Beach, to really be understanding of the perils of superfood and the idea of putting super in front of a man or super in front of phosphate or supering something, and how dangerous most of these supering this and supering that really is, because that is not going to get rid of anybody's lust ever. People are praying in the temples, but it's a mess outside, plastic everywhere, just disgusting, you know what I mean? And we've got to move away from chasing the juicy butt of lambs and remember just how much effort, which is next to nothing, it takes to bend over and pick up a nut from the ground or a fig, from the tree. You see, olives and figs and nuts create the shade very beautifully. But, of course, when people had a taste of the juicy butt of a lamb, they forgot figs. It was like a drug, And, yes, it is a drug. Of course, flesh, people will tell you they can hardly do without it once they've had a taste of it. And that's the reason why you should never taste it if you can help it. But if you have a taste of that flesh, people acquire a taste, you see, once they've tasted. So I recommend people not to taste at all. It's not a good thing. But you'll never find frog's flesh, of course, in the shops in London because English people, they really haven't tasted frogs yet. But in places where people are eating frogs, you can find even frog's flesh there. You see? So stop tasting all of that flesh and stop encouraging anybody from tasting it, and people forget about it. But if you've never tasted the flesh of something, or you've never heard about people eating the flesh of another living being, it could be so dissociated that it was sold in plastic. You never saw the sufferedness of the animal. And then maybe people need to be associated more with the pain and sufferedness, and stop just valet parking the car and having a cliffhanger, and just bringing in a body ailment relentlessly, and then running off to get a little bit of acupuncture or something. This just won't work, really. There's many stones here that we've been talking about that absolutely do need to be turned over, you know what I mean? And if you leave one of them not turned, that could be the very stone that should be turned, that is turning everything else, you know what I mean? So people are running themselves through these programs in America here, for instance, and every single one of them comes out of the program still really waxy, and they're all their stones solidly, basically intact, still there. And it can help a little bit, of course. They get pampered. They stop some of the toxins a bit. Typically, most of these programs are whacking people with all these high tannin foods and dead food. It's not live food. But the average person is going through these cleansing programs for the most part still, and they're all coming out with all their bile stones still intact. Yes. So it really is just absolutely delaying the inevitable. And it's exciting to people, though, if the roof is leaking, really bad in their house. I see that it's extremely exciting to people to talk a bit about changing the furniture coverings and how much money will be spent over the months ahead, making sure that the furniture coverings are sorted out. But the roof leaking all over the furniture coverings doesn't seem to be interesting conversation much. You know what I mean? It's better to talk about shopping and connecting with your architect and the interior designers and this sort of thing, But isn't it amazing, Lukey, eh? Far more interesting to spend money, $35,000 even on a painting, and how lovely. But certainly anybody who's sharing the truth with you about actually a condition that you might have because you're just a dairy consumer, and you can't stand that being said because that's the weakness, really. You know what I mean? Insulin growth factor city, so we'll you just got to really allow a bit of milk. You know what I mean? Or something, But I recommend to people be allowing, just relax the shoulders. It's okay, you know what I mean? I'm very, very understanding. The vast majority of people in the movement are fairly ignorant, I've got to tell you. But, that's the truth. The truth is that if somebody started out in Ayurvedicness, which today is just to cook dead food symptoms arising from bean and grain eating, which causes people to breed like rabbits, and then seed eating, of course, and grain and seed eating stimulates dogs even to hump like crazy. And then farmers know that if they feed their dogs just as they would and naturally, the dogs just really only go into estrus once a year, basically, a little bit, and they really are in their beauty. But people feeding their dogs and animals every single day all this dead food, how bad is that? But why would anybody be so caring to go to a shop in a supermarket where something is organic when they have no care at all for their own intestinal tract to ever have been organic? You know what I mean? It's pretty weird to me. But anyway, the conversation could never really be about actual bile occlusion, which does exist, because no more money would be spent on all these pills and stuff, But if you do talk to a Chinese practitioner or even a Western medicine person or anyone in the New Age movement who are into these pills, it's lotions, potions, powders and pills, and a nice amount of snake oil. And these things work 30% of the time because you've really got to be able to convince people, you know. And these people are very convincing, and that's nice. And we should never forget that's very important. However, you know, you've got to really do what you can to get the whole thing down and be deeply more understanding of what really cancer is, you know, and go after it and clear the whole thing up. And but where somebody really is telling you the truth about something, don't ever mention the person's name if you've got some truth from them, because you could run with that and make it your own a little bit or something, you know what I mean? And I see people, that's what they've done. They've got the ecology diet and they've got the this and they've got the that, and they can have often even been students of mine. I have a family that ran all over America here a bit, and they've taught everybody to just down kale like crazy. Weird as hell, call what they do raw food or living food, and they've got people just eating grass. God help us, it's so crazy, isn't it, eh? But they have no physiological background whatsoever, and they've done everything they can to never mention live food at all, ever. But they did begin as gringos, I remember, back then. They had no knowledge whatsoever, began a little, got a little bit of 4 days, did a bit of sweat lodge and stuff and took off. And then started chowing down on grain, which makes you fart like crazy. And then all ended up with bile occlusions really bad, and then turned into living food people after, you know, Anne Wigmore died, you know. It just was weird as hell, you know what I mean? But it's very, very test tube science when you can just look and find calcium, which is in kale, but they will not tell you that it's an extremely negative calcium ratio, all right? And it's going to end up you acidifying your body. And then why? Well, because it's got a lot of oxalic acid, you dumb as beetle idiot. So stop your test tube science stuff, because it's ridiculous. Why not learn a bit about live food and start to practice live food? You know what I mean? I don't know if anybody's reinvented anything better. And I can tell you that a lot of deep insight gone into it, way beyond Steiner, certainly. And then, you know, you've got the Atkins this, and you've got the South Beach whatever, and it's yawn. Honest to God, it's just Drongo City. It's really, Drongo is really a dingo combined with a zombie. And in Australia, that's called a drongo. But drongos do exist, and they are programmable, you know, and they can be reprogrammed to work properly, so everything is nice. Because our real condition is actually to be just completely of our mind to be asleep, you know, actually. As you are the body, then I am is existing, and you've renounced it. As you are the body, then I am is existing, and you've renounced it. As you are the body, then I am is existing, and you've renounced it. As you are